All right, so let's talk about busing a little bit. The vocal bus, the crush, and the plate, if we turn the other things off, are all being sent to the what I call the vocal sub.
And I walk out of this place, and I don't know nothing.
Now the Vox chamber is being sent to where the drums would usually go, or the beat bus, and the long verb is being sent to where the bass line is being sent, and then the vocal thickening things, the high octaves, are being sent to what I've sort of called my front wide bus at the moment, and then the low octaves are being sent to the rear wide. Now this front wide, rear wide, and all this, the way I do these subs changes from one mix to another. It just depends on what instruments I have working. I always have one for the vocals. I'll always have one for the drums or the beat. Usually I have the bass on a different one for the drums, not always, but in this one I wanted the bass really sat back behind everything else, so it's on its own thing. But it just varies. I don't want to go into this too much because it's not really about vocal processing, but it's kind of a little bit relevant, I guess. A lot of people talk about multi-bus compression or Browerizing. I'm not completely convinced by multi-bus compression when it comes to in the box. I'm not sure that it really works. What I like to do is apply different types of saturation to the buses, because I think that has a sort of a similar effect in a way, that by using different types of saturation emulation, you're going to sort of be messing with the transients, messing with the phase a little bit, messing with the EQ, and you're going to start to get a little bit of separation, a little bit of contrast. And that's all you're really trying to do with in-the-box mixing, is just try and mess it up a little bit. It's just a little too clean. So what I do is I use decapitator on the different buses. The reason I use decapitator is for two reasons. One, because firstly, I know that Soundtoys make very good plugins, so I know it's well put together, which means that I can trust it to have all of my mix go through it in over the 5 buses. So I can trust it to do the job I need it to do. And also actually because I didn't get on with it for a long time, I couldn't really work it out, so I don't use it anywhere else. And I only want the saturation to go through decapitator once. I don't want to be stacking it, because I don't want the particular sort of quirks of decapitator in terms of phase and EQ to be stacking across the mix. So you don't have to use decapitator to do this. You could do it with different saturation plugins. You could do it all sorts of ways, but this is how I do it. And the way I do it is I start with a vocal line, I crank the shizzle out of it, and I go through the different emulations, and I find the one that works, that sounds the nicest, that suits the vocals. Because the vocals are going to be the most sort of particular. And then I back it right off. You can see I've got 1.4 drive, 10.5 mix, and then I've just brightened it up a little bit because I want the vocals to be up at the front. If we go to, say, the complete other extreme, like the bass line, you can see already I've got it set much darker. I've got a different emulation, a bit more, twice as much drive, and about twice as much mix. So because there's more saturation on it, it's going to compress it more. That's my theory anyway. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. It's because it's more compressed, it's going to sit better back at the back of the mix. Things that are less compressed, are more dynamic, tend to sound bigger. And I've darkened it up a little bit as well. And this is just dialed in by ear. I'm not thinking about it too much. And you'll see they're all at slightly different emulations on the buses. So to go back to the vocals now, the bus, the Vox bus, the main vocal line, the crush, and the plate are all going to the sub. And then these different reverbs and different thickenings are all going to these different things. So they're all going through different versions, different emulations of Decapitator, which is helping to create more contrast, more depth, more variation. And then for the wide, the high octave vocal thickenings, I also have the FabFilter Saturn, which is giving it some width. It's on a 25% mix. I suspect that's because we're in the, we're in the chorus, I think. Yeah. Yeah, usually it's down at 21%. So it's a little bit automated there to just give a little bit more saturation in the choruses, to just push things a little bit wider. Saturation makes things sound wider because, let me get this right, because square waves sound wider to us than sine waves. Basically, the more that you kind of saturate up and spike up and make the you take that sort of nice, smooth, organic kind of analog curve, audio curve, and sort of make it more angular, the wider it sounds to our ears. So rather than using a widening plugin, if you just apply a little bit of saturation, your mix will start to sound a little bit wider, or the things that you've got pan wide. So that's going on. And then on the vocal bus, we have this. We have the Lindell TE100s, which I've had for ages, and I didn't really use that much. And again, watching the Bob Horn Q&A, he used it to boost the high frequencies on the vocals, and it was so smooth and worked so well. And it's really tricky boosting those frequencies. You usually have to deal with them a lot. That I was just well impressed and thought, yep, I'm stealing that. Thank you very much. So that's on there. I would usually have it at an obnoxious oversample level because I can't help myself. I've turned the oversample off because I'm doing this at the same time, so I don't want the mix to break up. So without it, the mix sounds like this.
And I don't know another life. I grew up here on the inside, and I cannot wait to stretch my legs with my father.
And it's just giving a little bit of brightness. Now, I want to be clear on this because you hear this word bandied about quite a lot. That is not air. At 6.5K, that's not air. Air is up at silly frequencies that may or may not be, that your dog can hear. 6.5K is not giving your vocal air. It's just making it brighter. If you want to apply frequencies that only your dog can hear and give it air, be my guest. Then we have an isotope Ozone 7 dynamic EQ, which I like. I like this a lot for these Baxendale is how you say it. Baxendale, who knows? Curves. So again, we'll start with it off, and then I'll put it on and see what it's doing.
Father calls, and I walk out of this place. And I don't know another life. I grew up here on the inside, and I cannot.
So what we've got here is not a lot, because I've done most of the dynamic EQ work with the Pro Q, so I don't need to do it again. I have, if I just turn that and that off, I have a low shelf, I believe that's what it's called. A low Baxendale. Baxendale? Help me out. What's this? How do you pronounce this word? That's just taking out, again, it's just taking the lows out a little bit. I just like the way it does it. It's doing it slightly differently from the Pro Q. And then I have the same thing going up from exactly the same sort of place. I think it's about 950, whatever. That's just boosting the highs a little bit to help give it a little bit of brightness. And then because I've got that, I also have this set around 10K, which is just pulling out some of those SE frequencies. Because I'm lifting this bit up, I'm just going to pull these things down a bit. Because I don't want those to come up as well. And that's it. That's all that's really doing. And eating a lot of my DSP. There's then a Pro Q on there that I suspect is doing virtually nothing. It's just got this flat tilt on it. I just like this flat tilt. Let's try it without it. It's going to make no difference, this.
Not wait to stretch my legs when my father calls.
Yeah.
And I walk out of this place.
Let's try that again. So this is without it
And I
bypassed.
don't know another life. I grew up here on the
Night and day. I swear that's what nailed it. There it is. There's the secret sauce. Yeah, it's a 0.7 dB flat tilt. Boom. There's the magic. And then I've got a gate. Just a standard. It's set at minus 60 dB. It's just a stop plug and gate. And the only reason I got a gate on there is because there's so much saturation and console emulation. You can see there's noise. If I take the gate off, there's minus 72 dB of noise that I don't know. I just don't want it there. So that's it for all of that. Then we have some automation that happens within the mix, which I'll just quickly go through because I've taken up far too much of your time already, I think. So as well as the vocal thickening automation we have here, we also have there's a little bit of automation on the Sheps. Yeah, there's a little bit of automation on the Sheps. Not that you can tell that much. And that's kicking in when it looks like that's coming in when the backing vocals are coming in. Let me just take it off. This is the whole mix. So I'll tell you what, let me pause that auto. So this is without the automation on the threshold. I
grew up here inside these walls. They say I'll never
so if I kick in the automation,
never leave. You're a killer and forever to the world. That's all you'll.
and all that's doing is it's just tucking in the vocals a little bit more, and it's just giving a bit more room to those back vocals, a bit more room to the rest of the mix, because it's just got a little bit busier. So I need to just tuck in some of the dynamics there. It's not a huge change. It's like a 1.4 dB change on that. And then when we go into the chorus, again, it tightens up again. So if I just run it into the chorus without the automation, so this is set for the verses.
Hold fast to my mind and the distant light. I've owned up the best I can. God knows I'm a better man than the reckless.
And you can just hear it's just giving the mix a little bit more room to breathe. It's just giving a little bit more space to stuff. So there's a little bit of that going on with the Sheps omni-channel. We also have a little bit of automation on the SDDRR2 GMVQ Beverly Hills 901210 ABC whatever that symbol Prince used to be, Batman symbol plugin. Really, seriously, these guys need to think of some new names. The Das Klanghelm. I'm just automating the saturation a little bit in, if I can find where I am, here we go, in the choruses. So if I go back to this chorus. So
Till the day I die, I've owned up the best I can. God.
And all it's doing is it's just coming up by an extra 8% or something. What that does is, because saturation is also compression, it's compressing the vocals a little bit more, give a little bit more space to the mix, but it's also giving the vocals a little bit more bite, so it's bringing them forward in the mix. So it's kind of a double whammy. You get a little bit more space for your mix, which particularly down the middle is really useful, because if you've got like a snare, if you've got like the drums going or something like that, the drum kit will lift up a little bit because the vocals aren't taking so much dynamic range, or your bass line might lift up a little bit, or whatever. You, rather than having to automate your drums, just tighten your vocal line up. A little bit more room for the drums. And by adding the saturation, you get a little bit of bite, which brings them forward in the mix, so you get kind of a double whammy. So that's happening as well. That's a neat trick. I like that one a lot. It's good fun. And what else have we got going on here? No idea. Oh, this is Okay. Okay, yeah. This is the de-esser. This is what I was talking about, that we've got some automation on the de-esser. So if I just take that off there, what that's doing is it's forcing a little bit more out of these lines here. You'll be able to see it, I think, as it goes past.
On the inside.
It's just pulling a little bit more out of those lines. And the reason I've done that is because when I've taken it out and I brought the track back in to master it, gone up on the mastering bus has pulled up a little bit of those frequencies. Possibly because I was relying a little bit too much on the mastering bus on this track to control the dynamics. I'll hold my hand up. I probably should have controlled the dynamics a little bit more on the track. But also because with isotope vinyl, as I said before, when you're lo-fiing something, when you're heavily affecting something, you're going to have these kind of problems. So I've had to come back into the mix, and you can see there's just a little bit of threshold auto to deal with that. And I'm also automating the range of the DS in terms of the amount of gain reduction. So I'm increasing the gain reduction from 2.8 to 3.5, which is what is a 0.7 dB increase. It's not a huge amount, but it just helps settle it down. The reason these increases are really quite small, you've got a threshold difference of, it's usually 19.6, now it's 21.95. That's not a big difference. The reason they're very small is because these frequencies are also the frequencies that give the vocal presence and give it energy and meaning and resonance and emotion and all of those things. So if you take too much out of it, they'll start to sound flat. Or if you're dealing with sort of the S-y kind of sounds, it'll start to sound like you get that kind of S-y kind of so that's not good. That's not going to work. That's it. So you've got to be very careful when you're pulling these things out, and you're going to be doing quite small moves. That is about that, I think. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. What I'll do is I'll just bypass that little lot, and if I just solo that, I'm just going to take these out. So without anything, the vocal,
And I don't know another life. I grew up here on the inside, and I cannot wait to stretch.
It's a very, very good vocal. It's a great performance. It's a good recording. It works very well. So all we've got there is we've just got the vocal automation going on the leveling. That's all that's happening there. So if we put everything back in, in fact, I'll tell you what, I'll play it and I'll put things back in. Dun, 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 dun. Just a minute. Mute this, mute that, mute the other. I'm going to mute that as well. What are you doing to me, you... Oh, Cubase. What a bastard. Here we go. It's mean. It's being mean to me. Right. Here we go. So I'll put the plugins back in, if indeed I can remember how to work Cubase, a DAW that I've now been using for probably about 5 years. So here we go. So we started off with just the raw vocal line.
And I don't know another life. I grew up here on the inside, and I cannot wait to stretch my legs when my father calls and I walk out of this place. And I don't know another life. I grew up here on the inside, and I cannot wait to stretch my legs when my father calls and I walk out of this place.
Yeah, that's that. And then in the mix, it all sounds like this.
And I don't know another life. I grew up here on the inside,
All right. I hope that was useful. I hope there was some stuff there that you'll find useful for your own mixing. Yeah, any questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll try and answer them. And yeah, I thank you all for your time.